humanity will remain. If you've no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. This beautiful poem was written by renowned 13th century Iranian poet Sadi and is inscribed on the United Nations building. His timeless words hold more truth today than ever before. Today, Bachahay Iran, or Iran's children, stand against a brutal regime that declares not just a war on its people, but a war on life, on joy. Iran will no longer have her identity, her culture, her art and beauty, her history, her future washed away by the Islamic Republic, whose own identity is pure misogyny, domination, force, racism, condescension, and violence. We join here today to bring our eyes on Iran in the 10th week of protests, to stand in solidarity with the brave girls and boys, women and men who, despite vicious repression, continue to storm the streets in over 157 cities, over 143 universities across Iran, to free her from her shackles of 43 years. We bring our eyes on Iran, and we will keep our eyes on Iran to show Iranians across all races, religions, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, and sexual and gender identities that our solidarity will not waver, that our global community stands with the people of Iran, and that our global leaders will continue to join in standing with Iran's children in this historic woman-led revolution. Jen, Jian, Azadi, Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, woman, life, freedom.
Thank you, Samida. Hello, everyone. My name is Zainab Salbi. I am a proud board member of Vital Voices, who brings you this event today with Four Freedoms. I'm a co-founder of Women for Women International and Daughters for Earth. And it is a true honor for me to MC today's event. Not only because I am in the company of our amazing leader, Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, not only because I'm in the company of amazing Iranian women, artists, activists, lawyers, thought makers, leaders. Not only I'm in the company of amazing artists from all over the world, launching Eyes on Iran in the shadow of the UN and on the eve of the UN Women 16 days activism campaign against all kinds of violence, against all kinds of gender-based violence. I am also proud to be here today, and to be honest, very emotional, to gather in Freedom Park to support women in Iran who are fighting for their freedom. For many of us, it could be a day, maybe just a little bit more than a day in Freedom Park, but freedom for those who grew up with no freedom and who are living in fear is a huge thing to do. The act of Iranian women, followed then and supported by Iranian men, to fight for their freedoms in the last 100 days, despite 14,000 people in prison, 300 people killed, every day going out in the street demanding their freedom, is a magnificent act of courage. Magnificent act of courage. They need to succeed, not only for their freedom, not only for Iranian freedom and civilians' freedom and their rights. They need to succeed for all women in the region, in the entire Muslim world, who are watching what is happening with Iranian women carefully, albeit silently, out of their fear. They need to succeed for all the impact that they will have on an entire region, and they need to succeed for all of us. For we are all part of the one. When one of us is harmed, all of us are harmed. And one of us is helped, it leads to being all women helped all over the world. Now, they're doing the courageous act. What they're asking of us is to echo their voices. It is to keep their voices on the media, to keep it on the front pages, to keep it in our discussion, because that's the only way it helps them in their success. And so that's today, and we celebrate them. We celebrate a multimedia art installation, a provocative multimedia art installations that you will see composed by various artists that you will hear about today. And we need all of you to continue being part of this movement. Now, this is part of this is the second part of a two-pronged approach campaign. One was brought on November 30th, not November 30th, October 30th, I'm sorry, a two-page ad taken by various women and signed by various women leaders from 14 countries, including Secretary Clinton, including myself and many other women leaders all over the world, demanding the UN to immediately take out Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, from the serving in the Commission of the Status on Women at the UN. And we need everyone to be part of pushing this petition out. It's already been signed by 100,000 people. We ask for all of you to join and sign and get more. You can find it in womenlifeandfreedom.com, and you can find it at vitalvoices.com. Now, I can't start I can't actually end without thanking the amazing groups and leaders and staff and women and men who made this event possible. So a special thank for Elise Nelson from Vital Voices and all the team at Vital Voices, Claudia Pena from Four Freedoms and all the team at Four Freedoms for bringing this event today. And as we start, allow me to introduce you the amazing human rights activist, Gisa Nia, who just came from Geneva and has an amazing and very important update for all of us.
Thanks so much, Zainab, and thank you to everybody who is here. It's truly so meaningful, and I hope that some of these photos go to our friends in Iran, the people who are protesting, so that they can see that people are in solidarity with them. It brings so much joy and support in these difficult times. As Zainab just said, I got back from Geneva, and I'm a human rights lawyer, and my job is really to look at the brutality of the Islamic Republic up close. We have more than 18,000 protesters who've been jailed. They're being subjected to custodial torture. Some of them are being sentenced to execution. My friend Tumaj Salahi, who is an Iranian rapper whose songs really animate the protesters and stand for freedom, might be sentenced to execution any day now. And there are so many stories like that. And in Geneva, the authorities of the Islamic Republic were there, and they lied. They just lied after lie. I was in that room trying to encourage states to vote in support of a fact-finding mission that would document these abuses. And the authorities were just acting like nothing is happening. They said that the protesters are very few and that they're rioters. They never made acknowledgement of the fact that they're executing people, that women are being subjected to sexual assaults, that young people as young as 15, as young as 12, just for wanting bodily autonomy, just for wanting to live in freedom, are being tortured. They didn't acknowledge any of that. And that is why this art is so important. That is why all of us being here is so important, because the real narrative is the narrative from the Iranian people. It is not from the Islamic Republic. It is not from a government that is lying to the world. And when other governments acknowledge the narratives of the people, when we acknowledge that, when the media, the global media discusses that, it's hugely important to the movement. So I thank you all. And I thank the wonderful artists who are here. We have Aphrodite Desiree Nabab, we have the artist Z, we have Icy and Saad, Mahfash Mostala, Sapide Mehraban, and Shirin Tawfiq. And we have Shada Soleimani, Hank Willis Thomas, and Shirin Neshat, who will be taking to the stage.
In typical shade of fashion, I spilled coffee all over my speech. My Baba taught me that art could be a tool to create awareness, communicate new perspectives, and to bring attention to human rights violations in a way that formal politics rarely can. He also taught me that it's the job of artists to take on the societal issues of our time, not to shy away from them. My Mama and Baba are political refugees, a label that does not begin to hint at the trauma and suffering that they endured at the hands of the Ayatollah's totalitarian regime. The same regime which is responsible for the death of Mahsa Zina Amini, as well as the murders of hundreds of others in the recent weeks. My parents raised me with a keen awareness that they came from a place that was not free. And as I got older, I would always wonder if Iran would ever truly be free. Over 70 days into our new revolution, and I'm afraid for the Iranian people, but I know that their strength will not waver. Iranians have been calling on those outside of the country to help amplify their voices and disseminate news of both the protests as well as the brutal suppression of human rights. I believe that art is one of the most important ways of transmitting the power of this movement beyond Iran's borders. This is particularly important because artists in Iran are not free and are subject to censorship, arrest, torture, and even death if they even begin to challenge governmental positions. These dimensions of censorship are so difficult to imagine. As of November 26th, our people's death toll is at 448, with 18,170 arrested for their political actions. Please know that these numbers are much likely higher. As we look out from this park and see the UN, I want to drive home to you how important it is that participating nations not only remove Iran from the Commission on the Status of Women, but also from the Charter itself. We need to make the message clear that the brutal and criminal behavior of the Ayatollah's totalitarian regime will not and no longer be tolerated by the Iranian people nor the global community.
Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Hank Willis Thomas. I'm a co-founder of an organization called For Freedoms, an artist collective who is co-presenting this amazing event. And on January 6, 1941, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave a State of Union address where he said that everyone was entitled to 4 basic freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. Those 4 freedoms became a call to action for people all over the world, and basically laid the framework for what eventually became the United Nations. And For Freedoms Park, where we're standing today, is a critical part of that legacy, and it has so much meaning. And I'm so grateful to Howard Axel and the incredible team here at For Freedoms Park for collaborating with us on this really amazing event. I'm honored to be one of the 10 artists who are presenting over the next 16 days here. And I'm really excited to be collaborating with Shirin Nishat, who I've known for a very long time and whose work has been deeply inspiring to me for so long. And to have her work presented here in this way at this critical time around this issue, which I believe we all have a vested interest in saying as much and doing as much as we can, because our freedoms are collective, and the work we do now will have a deep and lasting impact on not only what's happening in Iran, but also here in the United States. So, Shirin.
Good morning. We're gathered here today surrounded by arts, facing the United Nations, the world's only truly universal and global organization to address issues that transcend national boundaries, an institution that is being created to defend and protect basic human rights. We as Iranians are here to ask the United Nations and the international community to be on the right side of history and to hear our voices. I'm here to say that the Islamic Republic does not represent the people of Iran. This is a government that has kept its people hostage and has created an atmosphere of terror, subjecting us to live under a constant state of fear for over 43 years. A government that had used religion and its absurd ideological rhetoric to silence, to oppress, to commit the worst atrocities against its own citizens, including murdering a young innocent woman, Mahsa Amini, for simply showing the slightest piece of hair. A government that has been killing our young protesters in streets of Iran, including our children, and has arrested and imprisoned over 18,000 men and women only in the last 11 weeks. A government that is holding some of our brightest minds, including students, journalists, activists, lawyers, writers, musicians, artists, actors, filmmakers captive behind bars, and is using torture and rape including our underage boys and girls, and is now preparing to execute hundreds of political prisoners under false accusations. A government that, as we speak, is engaged in a massacre of our minority population in regions of Kurdistan and Balochistan. In the context of Eyes on Iran, for a country that has deprived its people of basic human rights, including freedom of expression, it's fascinating to see how our artists have been central to this revolution, including our young art students in Iranian universities who have created some of the most subversive, imaginative, and powerful protest art in recent times in all different nature. Historically, our artists, all people of imagination, have been the voices of Iranian people, particularly in the moments of political crisis. Artists have been a bridge between their communities, their people, and those in power. They have been depended on to inspire, to provoke, and mobilize their people. No wonder then why in this revolution our artists have become some of the greatest target and threats to the Islamic regime. Let us use the example of Shervin Hajipur, a 25-year-old musician who, sitting in his room in Iran, created a song called Baraye, which has transformed into a national anthem. This song is the most honest way, has captured every Iranian's emotion of pain, sadness, and struggle in recent history. Let me bring to your attention artists who have been silenced, who are in grave situation. This includes Muhammad Rasulov, Jafar Panahi, two of our most important living filmmakers who have been kept in prison for months for simply objecting to the government's excessive use of force against its citizens. I'd like to particularly bring your attention to artists who are even in more dire state today. Salman Yassin, a brilliant 27-year-old Kurdish rapper, has been convicted to be executed. Tumaj Salahi, as Gisu mentioned, a 31-year-old hip-hop artist, has been imprisoned under extreme form of torture and now in the past few days in a closed courtroom on a trial without any access to family or proper defense, and is expected to face death penalty. These are two musicians who are simply example of artists whose crimes have been making art that is truthful. I plead with the United Nations and the international community to hear me. All artists are the gems of our societies. They are the saving grace of our country that has been terribly bruised. No authority, no government should be entitled to execute artists. They need to be stopped. Help us to save their lives. Help us demand the freedom of political prisoners. To women, life, and freedom.
Thank you, Shireen, for this beautiful, and thank you everyone for this beautiful sharings. I now have the extreme honor to introduce a woman who has been persistent in dedicating her life and advocacy for women's rights. From her early college years to her being at the White House, to running for the White House, for Senate, and for being a senator, for being a Secretary of State, for advocating for women's rights worldwide. Worldwide. It's easy to be talking about it in blips in your career. It is one thing, it's another thing to be so persistent about it and so consistent about it throughout all your life. Women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights is a phrase that was coined by Hillary Clinton. And then 1995, at the 4th UN Convention on Women in Beijing. We're still working on it. We're still working on that. And thanks to her leadership, we have made a lot of progress around the world. And thanks to her leadership, it's a huge honor for you to be sitting with us here on stage. Honestly, thank you. Thank you so much for your support for all women, and it's really an honor to be.
Thank you so much. I am honored myself to be here and very grateful that we are gathered here in the site of the UN, but also in the Four Freedoms Park that Hank so eloquently reminded us represents a commitment to human dignity and human rights, first articulated by President Roosevelt, but it lives here on this island as a reminder that the work must continue. I want to recognize Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who is with us, and also the chair of the board of the Freedom Park, Sally Menard. We are grateful that you opened this incredibly important site to us today to hold this gathering and send out our message of solidarity to the people, particularly the young people, particularly women and girls in Iran. I want to thank everyone behind the Woman Life Freedom campaign, including the Four Freedoms Artist Collective, Vital Voices Global Partnership, and the coalition of Iranian women leaders here in the United States and around the world who are saying enough is enough and are challenging all of us to keep our eyes on Iran, to understand what is happening there right now is not isolated. It is interconnected with all of the other challenges to human life and human rights and human freedom that are unfortunately seen elsewhere in the world as well. I am honored to stand with all of you and to support the brave women of Iran. And like those who have come before me, to recognize that the murder of Mahsa Amini in the hands of the police sparked a revolution where the Iranian people, led by girls and women, said enough. We will not tolerate this oppression any longer. So I stand here honoring her memory as well as the more than 400 other Iranians who have since been killed protesting her death and protesting for their freedom, and the tens of thousands who have been arrested. Their fight is our fight. This is about the global struggle for human rights, human dignity, human freedom, gender equality, and justice. Think of the women in Afghanistan deprived of education. The women in Ukraine defending their country against the barbarity of Putin's invasion. The women here in the United States fighting for our bodily autonomy. We all struggle and we all have a right to be free and equal. Yet we know this is not easy. It's not easy in any of the places that I just named and so many more. But the women who are courageously leading the protests, ripping off their compulsory hijabs, burning them, cutting off their hair, are channeling a deep rage, a deep strength, and a deep desire for a free and just society. Women coming together as they are in Iran, demanding action, must be supported by all of us. The campaign, Eyes on Iran, which is a multimedia art activation in the shadow of the United Nations, is intended to make sure that the public does not forget or ignore the brutal crackdown occurring on Iranian women and girls. And it is a plea to the press of the world to continue covering this horrible series of events inside Iran. Do not move on from this story, we beg you, because this story is a story that has so much depth and importance to all of us. We also call on the United Nations member states to match the courage of Iranian citizens and remove Iran from the Commission on the Status of Women. A country that systematically abuses the rights of women and girls has no place participating on a commission whose purpose is to protect those rights. And every day that Iran remains a member of that commission, that body and the UN lose credibility. This call to action began, as you've heard, with a 2-page petition in the New York Times last month, calling on member states to heed the plea of Iranian women and remove Iran from the commission. I was proud to sign the petition along with many women from around the world, and that online petition now has nearly 100,000 signatures. Today marks the second phase of that campaign, and I hope all of you will commit to signing the petition and keeping your eyes on Iran. We know that removing a country from the Commission on the Status of Women is unprecedented, but so is a revolution led by women and girls. Through this campaign, we hope to communicate through the media and online, which is critically important, to those courageous women and girls and the men and boys supporting them, that we see you and we stand with you. You are not alone in your efforts. People all over the world support you because your struggle is our struggle. Your rights are rights that we claim for ourselves and that every human being is entitled to. I remember after I gave the speech in Beijing in 1995, I appeared on a radio broadcast of Voice of America, and it was a call-in show. And one of the calls came from inside Iran. And the male questioner asked me, "What do you mean women's rights are human rights? What do you mean by that?" And I said, I want you to shut your eyes and imagine all the rights you as a man in Iran have right now. We want the same rights that you have. I will never forget that call, and I will never forget where it came from. And today, I'm saying once again, I'm saying to the people who control Iran, who have suppressed freedom, not for religion and ideology as they claim, but for the sheer, raw exercise of power. Listen to your people. Give all of your people the human rights and give your women and girls their rights to become all they were intended to be. That is what any government should be doing, and what we're going to do our part to make sure this Iranian government understands there will be no rest. There will be no place to hide and rationalize what they are attempting to do once again. And so please stand with us and keep your eyes on Iran.
Thank you very much, Secretary Clinton, for being here with us. Your leadership and allyship means so much to us on behalf of all Iranian women worldwide. I, like many of Iranian people here, was forced to flee the country of my birth. My father was imprisoned and tortured by the Revolutionary Guards. I've been working to highlight for the past 20 years the egregious human rights abuses under the regime of the Islamic Republic, particularly highlighting child executions, and the oppression of women. We documented over 160 children on death row, and women are legally valued as being half of a man under the law. These repressive laws are imposed by the same brutal, tyrannical, and theocratic regime that sits on the Commission for the Status of Women today. It's appalling. But there is hope. Today, we have more eyes on Iran than ever before. Therefore, an opportunity that requires everyone staying awake to this moment and choosing to stand on the right side of history. We need our global media to keep their eyes on Iran. We need our global decision makers to keep their eyes on Iran. We need not stand. We would need not to succumb to the despair or disinterest that often follows a surge of attention. With the commitment of Iranians who are sacrificing their life, risking being literally blinded by regime bullets and experiencing rape as a weapon of suppression, along with the commitment of political will from the globe, we can see justice. It's only a matter of how soon. How many more Masa Aminis, Nikas, 10-year-old Kian Pirfalaks, and peaceful protesters being massacred in the Kurdish regions will it take for the world to not only see with their eyes, but act with their hearts? Woman, life, freedom. Thank you.
Nazanin, thank you for those remarks. And Secretary Clinton, thank you for being here with us today and for delivering those powerful words. We're going to open up the question and answer session now to our speakers and our artists. It'll be for about 10 minutes. And so if anybody has any questions, you'll say them and then I'll repeat them here.
Secretary Clinton, did the male caller who you spoke to in 1995 ever respond to how you what you said to him?
I think he was bewildered by the concept.